Live from the Washington, D.C. area, it's the Inside Scoop, Emerald Planet. All the ecology news that our viewers want to know. Now, here's your host, Executive Director of the Emerald Planet, Dr. Sam Lee Hancock.
Hello and welcome to the Emerald Planet as we come to you from Washington, D.C. in the United States as we look around the globe in 144 different countries, looking for those 1,000 best practices, technology, services, products, and of course the people are making a difference as we move through the 21st century. And as the population continues to grow around the world, maybe 9 billion by 2050, how are we going to be able to provide everything that's needed for humankind so that they actually have an enhanced quality of life and not just exist? And I have a gentleman sitting right beside me who's dealing with one of the most important issues. Actually, it's water is life, because without water we can't exist. And this is something he's been working on for quite some time. This is Timothy. He goes by Tim McFarren. He is an international consultant, project manager, water and wastewater innovation and implementation, and focus on Dominican Republic. And also he's a former associate program country director for the Peace Corps. That's fantastic. It's a great background you have there. And Tim, welcome to the Emerald Planet TV.
It's a pleasure. Thanks.
Glad to have you here. This theme we're going on right now is evolution of professional skills and projects. Tell us a little bit about yourself and this evolution coming into the Peace Corps, working Dominican Republic. Now you're there and, you know, even an enhanced professional opportunities. So tell us about that start and this transformation.
Thanks for having me on the show, Sam, and appreciate this. To answer your question, really tends to be a long story. I'm going to make it short. My parents were missionaries in Bolivia, and I was born there, and 5 of us, which you probably know some of them already. So I was brought up with community development, and community development was part of our family, and we wanted to continue work. I wanted to continue working on that. I specialized in appropriate technology and alternative energies in Bolivia. And then I had a chance to, quote unquote, join Peace Corps, but it's as a staff. And I became the APCD, or the Associate Program Country Director for La Paz for Bolivia, in water and sanitation. Mm-hmm. I worked as a director for 12 years in Bolivia. I had about 172 volunteers who went through through the program, of which I'm very proud, because they're the people that, after Peace Corps closed in 2009, I made a recount of really what all the projects they have done or we had done in the process, and which were sustainable, which continued, and so on. So it was nice to go back on that. And then, of course, Peace Corps closed, and I applied for a position as a program training officer, and I got sent here to the Dominican Republic. But then, soon after that, there was the need to have somebody to continue with the water sanitation program here.
Yeah, let's look at this. In other words, looking at the duties that you have as an international consultant and a professional in this area, how do you work with the local populations, governments, NGOs, and others? What we're looking at in this image right here, this is some of probably the very early projects.
Well, a lot of the work that I had done is really human relations, and first of all, a lot of it is sustainability, and the emphasis for me is sustainability, and trying to work with organizations, people, and so on, that are based that believe in sustainability. So my focus in everything I've been doing is trying to make a project sustainable. If it's not sustainable or fails or so on, it's, well, go back to the drawing board and get it going again.
Looking at best practices, what's some of the lessons that you've learned over the years that been in the Dominican Republic and the activities, interactions you've had with other nations about sustainability? I know this is something that you're working on. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. But just looking at best practices, what just kind of jumps out at you that is something that really can be used?
Well, the best practice that I can, and it becomes a little bit into maybe a short story on this, is I was a partner in a small shop, an appropriate technology shop in Bolivia with indigenous people. I taught them how to weld, on how to run a shop, and how to work with designs, especially windmills and hand pumps. I worked with them so that they could be interested in providing a service to a client. And not just building something that is low quality and that's not going to be long lasting. To make a sort of a long story short, that company that right now continues, and they've installed in the Altiplano in Bolivia almost from about 400 windmills in the.
That's incredible. Yeah, what a success story.
I am still in touch after almost, 20 years of working with them, but I'm still in touch with them. And their failure rate is 95%. Their non-failure rate is 95%.
Success rate. Let's use it from that standpoint. Okay. Yeah,
the success rate is 95% of those windmills are still working.
That's absolutely fantastic.
Because I worked the process in of sustainability and make sure that the product is good quality and there's a service behind it.
Yeah.
I learned an awful lot from the American way of doing things, is, the service oriented,
Yeah. Well, that's very important, Tim, because you put things out there. They say about 75% of the wells that are drilled on the African continent stop working after 6 months because no one's taught about how to maintain even the simple bush pumps. You know what they are, just the hand pump and a few gaskets and all that. And but there are certain groups that have what you're talking about, 95 to 100% success rate, because you don't get a well if you don't go to training class and you don't have people that are identified. They're going to do the maintenance on those things, and it sounds like that's what you're doing. So, leading to the next question, successes. So this would be an example of some of the successes. What about the Dominican Republic, which is where you have such a tremendous focus right now?
In the Dominican Republic, I've been trying to apply the same concept that I did in Bolivia. There are few things that did not work there necessarily. I didn't have the time to do it. For me, the concept of ferrocement tank construction is something I did again back in Bolivia, and I applied it here. And I trained maybe 5 volunteers on how to do this, and I got my coveralls on, and was with them the whole way. And just that example, it replicated to other projects, and the success on that was a little bit where we, through some funding that my sister managed to get, for a ferrocement tank construction project, in which we trained 2 Haitians, and that was at the time right after the earthquake, and one of the Haitians went to Haiti and taught 20 people how to do it.
That's fantastic.
And he came back 2 weeks later after training those 20 people. I imagine have built about 2,000 of these rainwater catchment tanks.
Oh, that's incredible.
So that's the sort of success that you start putting when a grain of sand in, and it replicates.
Yeah. Well, looking over your shoulder, I've been showing these slides, and of course, this is not really a very pretty sight, but this is some of the the areas that you've actually been working, and we're going to get to what you've actually created out of all this. So looking at this in Dominican Republic, just kind of encapsulating everything that you shared to this point right here, Tim, starting working with the local community leaders and then leading up to something that's much better than what was there before. What are some of the steps that you go through in your professional capabilities and also your understanding that's really key to going from very foul water full of garbage to where you're having something like this that actually can filter the water and you grow plants?
Yeah, I sort of want to maybe to redirect the question is how do I start in an ideal situation, getting a project going? And one of the keys is to get the community development process going. The pictures that we're seeing on there is a wetland that was built in Punta Cana, in a dormitory community of Punta Cana. It's not Punta Cana itself, but it's the workers that work in the resorts that have this, and we built that. And we discovered throughout this process is that we built designed this wetland system. It worked perfect. It works perfectly. And then there was one person that was taking care of it. This person got a fantastic job, and it abandoned it. And probably, I don't know if there's some pictures in there, but the whole thing was going bottoms up. It really was a disaster. No pun intended. No, sorry about that, right? No, I got to use that word now.
That's okay. We're about ready to run out of time. But the whole thing is, I think what you're saying is that you have to train people to be able to maintain and provide sustainability and resiliency within the project itself.
I think you have to work with the community development process, which is not training and operation is part of that, but you have to go through the organizational process.
Right.
And I want to talk about that more later.
Yeah, well, we're going to actually do that. I'm going to put this up here because that has your title and all those good things. But looking at, what do you see for the growth and expansion of your projects over the next 5, 10, 15 years? And you got about 10 seconds to do that. 10 seconds.
My question was to ask you is how many toilets are there? How many of those toilets are dumping all their water into the ocean untreated?
Yeah, I can.
Now you have an idea of how much work I have?
Yep. Tim McFarren, thank you for being with us as we create the Emerald Planet.
One day these rats were playing in the woods. Well, it's some matches and that's no good. Listen to smoke before you give it a try.
Only you.
Don't play with matches. Don't play with fire. Cause there's nothing very funny about ripped off money. Nothing very nice on a homeless mind. So if a gorgeous force is what you desire, don't play with matches. Don't play with fire. Yeah.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Fire.
Why don't you just wash your car at home?
When I wash my car, everything runs down the street and down into the storm drains. With all the chemicals in the soaps and waxes, the last thing I want to do is poison my own drinking water. At least here, it's all contained and recycled on site. That's why I also take my car in for oil changes instead of doing it myself. I might take a chance on spilling stuff. You know what the best part is?
What?
More time to kick back and watch the game.
How far would you go to protect the planet?
I want you to build an ark.
Here we go. Okay, that's good. Oh, okay. Ow!
Maybe there's another way.
People, the flood is imminent!
Is it too much to ask for a little precipitation?
Go to fightglobalwarming.com to find out what you and your community can do to reduce global warming pollution.
Somewhere around the world, there are men and women of the armed forces risking their lives, helping rebuild communities after natural disasters, collecting toys for needy children, tutoring kids in school. These are your sons and daughters who work to keep us safe, secure, and free. Dedicated men and women who put their country first.
We're back to the Inside Scoop Emerald Planet. Here again, your host, Dr. Sam.
Hello and welcome to the Emerald Planet as we come to you from Washington, D.C. in the United States, and we're looking for those 1,000 best practices, the best of the best as we call it, that's actually going to take us through the 21st century. Because we're having a planet of about 9 billion people by 2050 and maybe 12 to 13 billion by the end of the century. So how are we going to provide all the basic infrastructure, the food, the fuel, the fiber, all the things that humanity needs to a planet that many people say we already have too many here at this time? And I have a gentleman who is actually working on something that's very important, which is the whole issue of water and wastewater, because without water there is no life. And this is Timothy, goes by Tim McFarren, who is an international consultant, project manager for water and wastewater project innovation and implementation, and also is a former associate program country director of Peace Corps in Dominican Republic. And Tim, welcome to the Emerald Planet TV.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
Glad to have you here. And you've been in this region virtually your whole life in South America and now in the Caribbean. So we're talking about Dominican Republic specifically, but what's going on in the Caribbean? Where is it for many of the international viewers, maybe some domestics that are not totally aware of the Caribbean and the countries there? Share a little bit about that, and then we'll go to Dominican Republic itself.
Okay, yeah, the Dominican Republic is located in the central part of the Caribbean, you could say. It's a little bit south of Cuba. It's next to Haiti. It has common borders with Haiti. It's a Spanish-speaking country that, and whereas Haiti is a French Creole-speaking country.
Yeah, and looking at that, this is one of the interesting things about that. When you look at the satellite photographs and you have Dominican Republic, you just see nothing but a green belt over the whole thing. Then you look at the other side of the same image and you see Haiti. It has less than 2% of canopy over the whole country. And when you have a typhoon or you have heavy rains, you can see 20, 30 miles worth of just brown colored water moving out into the Caribbean itself. Right. What's the difference as far as the perspective of why Dominican Republic, as a nation, really has worked hard to keep itself green and wanting to enhance that, and yet it's not the same right across the border in Haiti?
I have, studied a little bit of the Dominican Republic history and trying to understand a little bit more the Haitian concept. A lot of it has to be with cultural differences that occur, and a lot of it depends on the period of the governing period of certain leaders, and I'm talking the Dominican Republic in this case, have always emphasized the need for preservation. One of those issues has been producing coal out of wood.
Charcoal.
Charcoal. Mm-hmm. And Haiti uses charcoal as their main source of fuel. Mm-hmm. So they have deforested basically all of Haiti to comply with that. Whereas the Dominican Republic uses other fuels. They use gas, propane gas, and things to compensate for that, mm-hmm. with some supposedly very strict laws saying, okay, you cannot produce charcoal in the Dominican Republic. But there are evidences that that's not happening right now.
But also the Dominican Republic, don't they have a very progressive emphasis on renewables as far as use of solar for hot water and even energy, maybe some wind energy, and maybe some biomass at the same time?
Within the last, I would say within the last 5 10 years since I've been there. There's been a lot of emphasis on producing electricity with windmills. They just finished installing a huge solar panel system. There's a long way still to go.
But at least they're making progress towards that, is that correct?
Right. But it's still dependent, unfortunately, with fossil fuels.
Now, looking at this, going into the projects that you're working on, how can the work that you're doing in Dominican Republic, and we'll get to the technique and the technology of what we're going to be talking about here as far as this special kind of wetland, but how can what you do there then be looked at or replicated as a best practice throughout the Caribbean? That's one of the reasons for showing the map. You've got 19, 20 countries in the Caribbean basin, and how can one country like a Dominican Republic really have a positive impact on other nations, within the same community?
Well, a lot of the technology is already available in other parts of South America that I know of. I don't know about the rest of the world precisely, but I've taken this technology and I'm trying to apply it and have it grow within the Dominican Republic to show that it is a solution to solving the wastewater problems.
Now, looking at this, what exactly we're looking at here? Looks like some pretty green plants, and then you've got substrate out of all this.
This is the concept of what we call the horizontal dry wetland. There are countries, big cities that use wetland systems for purifying wastewater. The city in New York City uses massive wastewater systems to be able to do this. But this one specifically is dry because the wastewater, if you could see on your left, the water is gray, it's dark, goes into a bed, a gravel bed. And as it passes through a series of plants, it has a process of purifying the water, and it goes out clean, and you have to work on the calculations on, okay, how much water is going in and what size do you want for the system.
I see, and then how much volume it's actually going to happen. So looking at these plants, what is special about these plants that you're actually using in this, what is called a horizontal dry wetland?
Okay, first of all, there's no water on top. I have to make sure that everybody understands that.
Okay.
And I do that in the Republic, in the Caribbean, when we're talking about technology in the Caribbean, is the mosquitoes, the smells, and so on. So this has no mosquitoes that grow on top because the water is not on top. So these plants, this specific one over here is called the Aeneas dominicus, which is really native of the Dominican Republic. It's a water plant, basically. It's from the family of the cattail, you could say. It's the same concept. It's a plant that takes oxygen through the root system, and the oxygen helps purify the water.
Now, looking at that, let's just carry us through this project. We'll be looking at here. So this is a very different age as far as these plants. Go ahead.
I can't remember exactly the timing on that, but that's about maybe 4 or 5 months after you saw the other plants. It really gets very bushy because there are a lot of nutrients that it's absorbing in the plant. And so it comes to a point where you have to cut it, you have to maintain
start thinning it out.
You have to start thinning it out. Now, this is not the only plant that is, you could put flowers in there. You could put plants that have flowers in it and make it into an economic venture for many communities, or put it in parks. I'm designing right now some that will be in front of a waterway on the Osama River that will be with flowers. So tourists could go and look around and, hey, what's in here? This is a plain wetland that has flowers in it. Oh, how beautiful. So,
Now looking at these tanks, so we're moving to something that's, you know, if you're really looking at, you know, this horizontal, it's very passive, but all of a sudden we come to these tanks. And that was in your images. So.
Part of the process of treating wastewater system is that you have to have a primary system first, which means that all the solids have to be settled into, it's a septic tank.
Right.
And so I designed the size of the septic tank based on the population that is being served. And I use ferrocement concept because it's very inexpensive. I have tons of experience with that for years and years. It's very resistant. No maintenance really to it. In this case, they're underground or half underground.
And this is another business that you can create for the local economy then.
Exactly.
Okay.
I've trained, like I said, I trained people, Haitians, in how to do this. But going back to your question is, this primary tank then does the first stage of cleaning the water and bringing what we call the DBO, which is really a measuring process
to solids
to see the contamination that the river that the water has. And so the second tank is used more for water, and it doesn't have any light or anything. It's anaerobic. I can't say the word too well on that, but and then from there it goes into the third stage, which is the wetland, and that's.
I see. These are really good-looking projects, but we're getting almost out of time. So, looking at the growth and the expansion of this kind of project, or projects, I should say, because there's multiple, in Dominican Republic, what do you see for the growth and acceptance of these kinds of projects there? And we have about 30 seconds this time.
The growth is infinite. Wastewater is the biggest problem there is in the world right now, and from my point of view.
I'm glad you actually said that. I keep saying that and people laugh at me.
No.
It really is half the world's population.
Right, and this is the solution, so I have an infinite amount of time to work on it and train and promote this.
And the whole thing is involving as many people in this process as absolutely possible. Well, this is Tim McFarren. He is international consultant and project manager, water and wastewater project innovation and implementation, focused on the Dominican Republic. And thank you for being here and sharing this information. This is something that's really of use to our viewers. And thank you, dear viewer, for being with us as we look around the globe to create the Emerald Planet.
Some dreams are universal. Dreams that inspire us. Multiple sclerosis is a devastating disease that changes lives forever. The National MS Society does more for people with MS than any organization in the world. But we can't do it alone. To get involved, visit us online at nationalmssociety.org or call 1-800-FIGHT-MS. This is why we're here. Because nobody dreams of having multiple sclerosis.
What's wrong with this picture? Half of young Americans can't locate economic powers like Japan and India. 20% can't even find the Pacific Ocean. Without geography, our children aren't ready for the world. Geography is everywhere. It's incredible creatures, rhythm, fashion, flavor. It's economics and politics. It's change. Understanding connections between people and places is critical in the 21st century. That's why we created mywonderfulworld.org. Go there now for your free parent and teacher action kits and give our kids the power of global knowledge. Because kids who understand our world today can succeed in it tomorrow.
We're back to the Inside Scoop Emerald Planet. Here again, your host, Dr. Sam.
Hello and welcome to the Emerald Planet as we come to you looking for those 1,000 best practices, the best technology, services, products that we can absolutely identify around the globe. It's important that we connect and reach out into various communities, large and small, countries large and small, because no one has a monopoly on knowledge, no one has a monopoly on practical experience of how we can address all the issues that the globe is facing. And with the advancement of more and more climate change and violent weather conditions, we need to be more cognizant of what we're actually doing to impact negatively the environment, and also on the other side of what we can do in a positive manner to actually, hopefully to, as we say, arrest, but even reverse the negative impact of climate change. And I have a gentleman that's kind of doing all of these things at one time, specifically working in the area of water and wastewater, but you're addressing, air, water, soil, environmental impacts. And this is Tim McFarren, who is an international consultant, project manager, water and wastewater project innovation and implementation, working with AgroForza SA, which is a company that he's consulting with, Dominican Republic, and also a former associate country director with Peace Corps in Dominican Republic. So quite a stellar background that you have there, Tim, and thank you for being with us on Emerald Planet TV.
It's a pleasure being here.
Glad to have you here. I want to talk a little bit about your experience with Peace Corps, although you've now transitioned on with your professional creds, if we can say that. But there's just a lot of training, a lot of knowledge that Peace Corps volunteers get when they go in country. Mm-hmm. And it's not just the cultural and the cross-cultural communications and language, that's all fantastic. But also there's a number of really hardcore technical and process skills that Peace Corps people learn, and then can transfer that into later life, which is exactly what you're doing with this AgroForza and the work you're doing there. So tell us a little bit about what you learned. Maybe let's back up. Why did you want to go into Peace Corps to start with? And then what do you think you learned, and then how that transitioned into what you're doing today? Let's do those 3 steps, if you don't mind.
First of all, the concept of why did I want to go into Peace Corps? There's a difference of joining Peace Corps and going into Peace Corps. So for me, it was as a career, and it happened to be just by coincidence that in Bolivia I was on a hike with a country director, and I asked, what do I need to get into Peace Corps? He says, what do you mean? Do you want to be a volunteer, or do you want to be staff? I says, well, what do you think? He says, boy, you could be great staff. Mm-hmm. So then an opening came up, and I got into it, and of course it was my livelihood, my happiness, and
well, you still look very happy. So
I'm
obviously,
happy. That Peace Corps was something that really set the pace for what I'm doing. Mm-hmm. I think it was a great time. I was working in Peace Corps for about 14 years.
That's incredible. Good for you.
In Bolivia and in the Dominican Republic. I think it's one of the best programs there is. I believe in it wholeheartedly.
I would agree with you. I've been in 89 countries, 50 of which over many years I've had a chance to meet Peace Corps volunteers in those countries. And without exception, they've been really excellent. Yeah. They're really dedicated, and like you, they're very happy at the same time. So that's good. But looking at what skills did you learn from that experience? Because many people in today's world, they say, well, I want to go to university, or I want to, travel, all these things. But always in the back of their mind is, how does that lead to my employment? Well, you started as an employee with Peace Corps, but the skills that you gained, how is that translated into what you're doing now?
One of the major skills is community development. I mean, I've always been in community development because my parents were very much involved with that. But this is like a good wine. You mature, it gets better. And I feel that if those skills that I gained and human relations, people management, cultural differences, issues with volunteers. But the emphasis for me has been the technical side. I believe that if I put in the technical, push the technical side on volunteers, we have successful volunteers. And that's what I basically picked up in this.
Looking at this image was behind your shoulder. This goes back to these technical skills that you gain. These are people that are working on these special wastewater treatment, local product, people being involved in all that. So why is it that the Peace Corps is so important in a country like Dominican Republic and dozens of others around the globe as far as bringing in innovation, sustainability, resiliency, all these things that are now becoming, very chic, and we talk about them again because, back in the 70s it was there and then it kind of went out of favor back in the early 90s. Now it's back again as we're moving, through the 2000s. So why the Peace Corps?
First of all, it's important to understand the Peace Corps has always gone through a stage of change. When I was director of the water program, that was the direction that Peace Corps wanted to take. Now they're, of course, more on the HIV issues and education, youth, which are very much needed. I'm in the Dominican Republic specifically. There are still the needs for all of it, and my program was closed because of basically U.S. funding reasons, and the environment project was also closed. And so it's something that is still needed, but again, where is the emphasis that Peace Corps sees where the needs are, and they're challenging it that way.
But you look at these people, and I think this is a really telling image here with most of the ladies that are looking at the pipe and how this would all fit into what you call this horizontal dry wetlands project. And this is something that really translates into the issues of health, issues of education, the technology transfer. Although it may be simple, it's still incredibly important. And at the same time, you can transfer these skills and then create your own small business within a lot of these communities. So just using this image here, how do we wrap all this together, whether Peace Corps is emphasizing it right now or not, with the work that you're currently doing in the Dominican Republic and the impact that you actually have in other areas of the environment?
If you notice in this picture, there are women that are handling pipe.
That's why we're focusing on this image. Yes.
Because what I believe in is that the women are the ones who have to maintain water and sewer systems because they are there when the repairs need to be made. Men are out in the field in many countries or in other places. And this is one of the exercises that I do in training for the sewer systems, in which I first tell them, okay, I want you guys to put together a sewer system of how it fits into your house. How do you think it fits into your house? So the women go and experiment, and they see how it's been done and they discuss it among themselves. The men are on the outside. And they put it together and says, okay, is this agreeable to you guys, to you ladies? Says, yeah. Okay, let's bring the men in. Let them critique what you have done. And then they'll go and no, this is supposed to be this way, that's supposed to be way, a little bit of machismo that sometimes is involved.
Right.
So it's a good process, a training process, so that they are learning from mistakes. But I'm not saying to the men, go and do it, because then the women who really need this training are not involved in the process.
And the whole thing about this too, and this really goes to the heart we were talking about earlier of the health and education, is that when the kids come down sick, and they know it probably is coming from, this fecal matter, it's out in the ground, those very early images that we had. It's really important because the women are the ones that are immediately sensitive to that and know what it costs the household to have that. Exactly. And this is just one of these systems that you're put in. When you're doing this with the community, what are some of the things that you're trying to get across to them as far as what is important to make it work and to be able to sustain it?
The key for me in the process of sustainability is organizing themselves into a committee. And before you start any project, it's got to be formed into a community, a working community. And I go further on and saying it has to be a committee that pays tariffs. If you don't pay tariffs, no matter how small the tariff is, people will not feel
a fee.
Yes, right. A fee. They will not feel it belongs to them. And we needed to make, when I do the training with my teams and so on, we make that emphasis. Okay, we won't start this project until you have a committee going, working correctly, and you have a bank account or some sort of savings account that is going, and it's you see the difference on the project and the sustainability long term. Somebody has to invest, not give out money and say, here's your project, because we wanted to do it.
Yeah, and if you look at this, going something like this is, going when the plants are really starting to take off from the nutrients.
This is a different system.
Said earlier, as you can't see this purposely, it really becomes very pretty. It fits right into the natural environment, and we're just about out of time. I'm going to leave this image up because I like the color contrast of this whole thing. Why is it important that they feel like they have buy-in into the project? What does that bring long term? Not just the sustainability of the project itself, but for the community itself.
First of all, I think if you have to take money out of your own pocket and pay for something, it hurts. Let's start with that. Second of all, people get trained and they become have a what do they call it? Behavior change. There's a behavior change process that goes into it, and that's what you're looking for, is to through a tariff system and people to have.
That's fantastic. Great point. This is Tim McFarren, international consultant, project manager, as we look around the globe to create the Emerald Planet.
This is firstgov.gov, where we're obsessed with getting you government information.
Brand new student loan applications on the site, baby. This calls for a celebration. Here's your uncle.
So in the end, it was either take the astronaut gig or come work here. What can I say? Duty called.
Dude, that's my cop.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. No, I'm pretty sure that's Sam's cop.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. No. Sam's. No.
Just log on or email us and get what you need.
C, change of address form. That's how it's done.
D, driver's license renewal.
E, emailing Social Security information.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Nice, we'll allow it. All right, Ed.
What are those?
Government surplus cars for auction.
You posted those online last time.
No, you did.
I'm posting them online this time.
For all your government information, firstgov.gov.
Oh, what have we got here? Sometimes you feel tired. You can't seem to lose those extra pounds off your midsection. And your joints hurt when you take the stairs. Well, you're getting older. But I'm happy to say that there's some simple things we can do to keep you happy and healthy for years to come. We can also lower your risk for some serious diseases the older population is often subject to. Proper nutrition is more important than ever. Your body has changed, you know. Not as many treats. A basic exercise plan, lots of walks and fresh air, and most importantly, come and see me for twice-yearly checkups to help ensure the best possible quality of life. Now, how does that sound? Good boy.
Improve the quality of life for your elderly pet. Schedule twice-yearly checkups that include preventive care and regular lab work. A message from the veterinary members of the American Animal Hospital Association.
We're back to the Inside Scoop Emerald Planet. Here again, your host, Dr. Sam.
Hello, and welcome to the Emerald Planet and Emerald Planet TV. We come to you on a week-to-week basis as we look around the globe in 144 different nations, looking for those 1,000 best practices, technologies, services, and products as we move through the 21st century. I'm Dr. Sam Hancock, the President and Executive Director of Emerald Planet and Emerald Planet TV. And we bring experts on a week-to-week basis to talk about the best practices they're involved in. We've now had representatives from 101 different countries in over 1,800 different technology, services, and products over this time. And we have a gentleman who is working in many areas as far as the environment is concerned, but specifically in water and wastewater treatment. This is Timothy, goes by Tim McFarren, International Consultant, Project Manager, Water and Wastewater Project Innovation Implementation, and also a former Associate Program Country Director with the Peace Corps Dominican Republic, and consulting right now with Agroforsa, SA, and in this water and wastewater treatment. And so we appreciate you being here and letting us to name the company that you're actually doing some work with. I think it's absolutely fantastic. And we may need to have them on in the future to talk about some of the projects that they're doing. Yeah. But looking at what it is that you're doing, the skills that you've gained first through the Peace Corps and now transferred into your private consulting work really is a lot about managing, looking at longevity, i.e. sustainability, resiliency, and all that. How does that translate into what we're moving to is community organizing and community development? How does all that flow, no pun intended, together?
No. First of all, thanks again for inviting me to your show. I feel that my experience with community development has gone through a process of going from the paternalistic point of view to really the sustainability point of view, where the end result is that you have to have a community organized before you start a project. And it's not just organizing it, but it's making sure that they have a water committee, in the case of water programs, water and sanitation programs, but it could be applied to any other project. And somewhere along the line, a tariff has to be paid by the associates.
Meaning they're investing in the project within their own community.
Right. But it's not an investment, a one-time investment. It's a long-term monthly payment.
Yeah. Just like you're paying for water and sewer in most developing
countries,
nations.
In any country, you're doing that. And so you're people say, oh, people are just too poor, they can't afford it, and so on. And so I ask them, and how many beers do you drink a week? Okay, so that's the sort of the thing to make sure that people understand that people can pay. There are exceptions, I'm not saying it's 100%. But that's the key to be able to pay operators, because if you don't have operators, the system will fall immediately. It takes training, and it's not just technical training. It's teaching about health, hygiene, the use of water. We have activities that I developed in Peace Corps with volunteers, or volunteers developed, and I'm still using it, so I'm sort of piggybacking on this, that they are participatory. They use a concept called sarar. You could use it with any language, any educational level. And so put emphasis on education and hygiene, and then go through the process of organizing the community. And then you do the maintenance training, like, you know, putting pipes together, having women involved. Women just love to be putting their hands into the, with a pipe wrench and things like that. So it pays off.
Well, the whole thing about, you can see from the rapt attention that you have here, the women that are involved in these seminars, they really are into what it is that you're teaching. But using this horizontal dry wetland project, this is something that you've evolved over the years. It's very important. But how does that fit into the total schema? Because you're trying to have a balance between the air, the soil, the water, the quality of all that, and teach people that you have to have this balance, not only for the environment around you, but the environment inside you, because of the cleanliness of the food, the water that you drink, and all that. How do you portray that so that people realize that, you know, we are, you know, the old adage of you are what you eat?
Of course, starting with the organizational process of that, and the training and the education that you're giving, not just women, but your children and men and so on. It goes through what's the behavior change process. And that behavior change takes time. And takes money. And that's why organizations just say, well, we're going to work 3 years on this project. One of my projects really is almost 20 years, and they're still educating. There's still community change process. You can't say, I'm going to invest this much. There has to be a process that goes long-term. Agencies, companies have to be investing in a long-term process just in the education.
How do you anticipate my next question? It's all about this timing thing, but go ahead. Finish your idea.
The question, you know, small is beautiful is sort of my Bible on it, but 10% is the technology and 90% is the social involvement. So you need to spend that 90% getting that technology to be, so that that technology becomes successful. And so I run that. That has been the back of my mind. And there are too many organizations that say, no, we're going to show you how to do a water system. We're going to install your water system, and so on. And then, yeah, we're going to train you how to operate it. But then volunteer work, I mean, goes thus far. They could, not for a lifetime.
Yeah, this whole thing, you see people sitting around here, it's, you know, it's the old concept to smell the breath. You have to spend time together, you have to trust people, they have to be invested in all that, and it's very important to do that. But looking at this whole thing about time, you know, from going in, identifying, trying to work with the local community, or identifying you know, the leadership within the community, how they then go about identifying, and then, of course, the design. I think in what you're doing, Tim, you're carrying people through this whole process where they actually helping the definition of it, the design of it, maybe even manufacturing the materials on hand, all the way through to you get to where you're going to actually turn it over to people to do this.
That's one thing with working with Agroforza. We've already done 2 big contracts with a package deal, where we start from the beginning, just have a community meeting and go through the whole process, where the community accepts and has a meeting at the end approving all the statutes, all the tariffs, and the involvement where it is. It takes about 2 months to get that training process going, which is the timing, what you're talking about. The thing that takes most of the time is exactly what you're seeing in the background is the training. This is a story. It came along from somewhere. It's called Paquita Cochinita, or a little stinky lady, a girl who is very dirty at the beginning, and through a storytelling process, they learn how to change the habit. But the thing that happens in this process is that it takes time. You can't just say, okay, we've got to train. No, we have to go back and make sure that they can understand what's going on.
Looking at this Agro-Forza, the group that you're working with right now, many companies don't want to be that patient. You know, they want to come in, sell the technology, send a crew out, put it in, and then hopefully it works long term. So how do you have a leadership within this company, so this Agro-Forza, that's willing to be patient, and they understand that you have to be patient, besides just the fact if Tim McFarren says, hey, you have to be patient, and you're going to be patient?
Well, a lot of it is is designing your project. In other words, I'm the one who designed the project for the last one. We're together with the team that I'm working. But within that design, just like a company, you have to have a beginning and you have to have an end, because if not, you don't make it profitable. But during that whole process, you try to make it as efficient as possible so that people get trained in that process, and you start finding mistakes and trying to correct them as you're going along. But it stops once in a while, but I'm a dedicated person. Even though the contract is over, I'm always going to go back to these communities and say, hey, how is it going? And if I have to give them more training, not because of Agro-Forza, I'll go and give more training on that. It's my dedication, my willingness to make the project successful.
Yeah, well, that's really important, and of course it all goes back to the long-term commitment you have. We've just about run out of time, so we have to wrap up here. But looking at this process as far as involving the community, involving the local government officials, NGOs, if they have them, communities of faith, in about 30 seconds, how do we mesh all of those divergent groups and maybe divergent opinions about what should be done or not done so that this is a long-term sustainable project?
Everybody should be on board on the same concepts. Everybody should be on board about tariffs paying, and government agencies and NGOs are doing that now. At least in the Dominican Republic, the water programs in INAPA are very much directed towards that concept. And so it's easier to work. It's easier to be able to do that as a team, and it's not just me, myself. It's
me, myself, and I doing this whole thing. Well, I think it's absolutely fantastic what you're doing, and thank you for sharing and bringing up the tariffs over and over. That's really important. Tim, thank you for being here.
Appreciate it.
Very nice job. You shared great information. And I love the work that you're doing, because I've known about you for a long time. You can't escape from us here, us gringos in the north. But thank you for being with us, and thank you, dear viewer, for being with us as we look around the globe, as we create the Emerald Planet.